All right, welcome in to another edition of Carps Corner. Excited here. Midweek mailbag. Got some sound, some comments made by Jim Harbaugh, some comments made by Ryan Day, some big honors for the Buckeyes, and some good stuff as we sit here and talk a little bit about some of the postseason awards and things that could be happening as they're getting some of these finalist lists out there. And then, as always, we're going to get all your questions answered with the midweek mailbag. So we got that all coming up, and that is going to be pretty fun and exciting as we kind of dive in to the rest of this. And listen, we got a big game coming up this week against Penn State. So that's going to be the focus of everything moving forward. That'll be a nice one. It'll be a noon kick in Happy Valley, so it won't be quite as intense as it has typically been. But don't let that diminish the fact that their fans are going to be juiced up. They're going to be ready to go. It's going to be the big noon kick. I know they're going to be fired up. Now, it won't be the whiteout. It won't be at night. So that'll obviously make it a little easier. And we're talking to some of the guys, they're walking through, the Woody. It's like, hey, they wanted it to be at night. Most of those guys were defensive guys, of course, because I'm like, you don't have to deal with the noise. You'd rather, you love the energy, the environment. You love how passionate and how great it can be, but it does put a lot on the players, obviously, on the offensive side to communicate and make sure you can have an efficient day. So a couple of things here. Number one, Ryan touched on Jackson Smith-Njigba, him being injured and it being more of a play count issue as opposed to him actually coming up, lame. And his plan is to play this week. I think Jackson's going to be okay. I would anticipate him playing this week. We'll have updates and everything as the week moves on, as you get more information. But honestly, I believe the 20 play count thing. They want to ease him back in. They don't necessarily need him as of yet. And heck, you may not need him towards Michigan and even after, because as well as Emeka, Marvin, and Julian are all playing, like they are holding it down in a big way. And so this is one of the things that people worry about. Are there enough touches to go around? Do these guys get selfish? Do they want to go out there, gobble up the ball, hold on to it, not really share? They want their touches. They don't care. And so I'll throw this up here to start. Julian Fleming on Jackson Smith-Njigba's return. I feel like it's a whole different ball game with him, he said. Having him come back will be a whole dynamic for our offense. Sounds good. Sounds great. You love to hear it. Now, Marvin Harrison Jr., who's having a heck of a season on his return and what it means for Ohio State's offense. I don't know what you do as a defensive coordinator. You got to pick one and say your prayers. It's going to be fun to watch. That's great. And the guys get along really well. They've got a great camaraderie. They understand everything that goes into playing the game. They know how hard it is. They know that having more players available who are really good is only going to help the team. And so that is fantastic. And so these guys come off that Iowa victory, you shake it off a little bit, and you get going. And then I'm going to throw this up here, right here. My man, Lathan Ransom, who suffered a huge injury, obviously, last year to his leg. Weren't sure if he was going to come back. And now all of a sudden, you've got Lathan Ransom, who is one of the 12 semifinalists for the Thorpe Award. He has played fantastic. He didn't even start out the season as the starter. He came in for Josh Proctor. They've rotated a little bit, but Lathan has played really well. He has earned that spot. He's a tremendous tackler. He does a great job coordinating things and moving stuff around on the defense. He's a smart guy. He is the first potential Thorpe Award finalist since Jeffrey Okuda. And the last guys to win it was my teammate Malcolm Jenkins, his senior year in 08, and then Antoine Winfield, his senior year in 98. So it's been a long time since we've had a finalist, about 4 years with Okuda, 3 years. And then it has been, 15 years almost since Jenkins won it, and even longer since Winfield won it. So a huge congrats to Lathan Ransom. Well-deserved. I don't think anybody can debate that with what he's done and what he means to this program and what he means to the back end of the defense and how good of a tackler he is. It's really, really impressive. Now let's get to some of the comments from Ryan Day on some of these guys and what they were able to do. I mentioned, you saw in the last show, talking about how well Zach Harrison played. He played really, really well. And Ryan had some thoughts as to Zach Harrison, what he's been able to do, and his leadership out there on the field, and what it ultimately means to the Buckeyes. Let's take a listen.
I thought Zach really has been playing good football. When you're as tall and as long as he is, there's so many great advantages just with length and getting your hands on, guys who are trying to block you. But, also you have to grow into your body and learn to play with leverage. And he's done that. And now you're starting to see the product of all that hard work. And he's really sacrificed a lot. He's put a lot of hard work in. But also good to see the other defensive ends make some plays as well. JT did a really good job on the rush, on the interception for a touchdown. He got the quarterback off of his mark and affected that throw. And JT's been playing tough football as well.
Tremendous. Ryan talks about his leadership, talks about growing into his body. And that's the one thing, like Zach Harrison got here. He was a tall, lean track dude, had great speed, but he had to learn to bend, had to learn to move inside, had really long levers. And it's tough for a guy when you're that long to develop that leverage, to develop the strength. He's been working relentlessly with Mickey Marotti. He's one of my favorite guys. He's worked really hard. He's a conscientious kid. He's smart, young man. He's smart. And he's carving out a nice niche, and the versatility of him being able to move inside, outside, and finally having that year. And I'm glad, you come back, and so often, guys come back or they leave and they could have that really tremendous year. And I feel like Zach, being a hometown Columbus, Central Ohio guy, and being a big time 5-star dude, huge expectations, it sometimes takes a little bit to kind of grow into him and to kind of realize what you have to be. And so Zach is doing that, doing a good job of it right now. And Ryan is taking notice. Now, for a guy who finally got some action, it's been a long time. We've got a lot of injuries. The secondary position. Cam Brown's been nicked up. Denzel Burke's been nicked up. You've seen Jair Brown, J.K. Johnson come up and play. But getting this guy back, Jordan Hancock, he's big, he's physical, he provides another element, he provides a depth piece as some of those other guys get nicked up. Ryan had some comments on his performance.
I saw a good week of practice and then made a few plays, and he does a really good job of playing the ball, and excited to get that game under his belt so that we can build on that moving forward.
Talks about having a good week of practice, that leading in to a positive play in the game. And that's a big deal. You have to practice well to get the confidence of your team. He's been easing into this thing. They've been working him through it, making sure that he's ready to go. These guys that are high speed perimeter guys, super athletic, these hamstrings, they can nag if you don't get them healed up right. So I feel like we're probably getting close to being there with Jordan Hancock, getting him out there, continuing to work him in more and more and more. And so that's fantastic. It's really good to see him being out there and what he's able to do. Now let's take a listen right here as to some thoughts about Ryan in the red zone and what that is all about.
Touchdowns. That's it. That's all we focus on. Now, when we can get field goals, certainly we need to get points, and those were important to get. But I'm going to wish we had calls back. We're going to wish we had plays back. But the number one goal is to score touchdowns in a red zone. That's a huge part of our plan to win. We've been good in that in the past. Not as good today.
Touchdowns. You hear Ryan talk about it. That's always the goal, TDs. Got some things to work on. They had some things to get figured out. It's a little disjointed. Like, Ryan's not running away from it. You always want to score touchdowns. It's great to get your kicker going, and it's great to be able to have that. But touchdowns are the purpose you get in the red zone. Ohio State had been phenomenal getting down there and getting touchdowns. And, I mean, with how well they've been able to play, what they've been able to do, just the skill they have. And then, I'm going to throw this up here quickly, just as we look at it. Iowa's defense, first 6 games, they gave up 59 points. Against Ohio State, they gave up 54. So think about that. That's how good they've been, that they've been able to play like that. First 6 games, Ohio State goes in there, we're getting upset. Believe me, there were 4 field goals that you said, hey, you split those in half into touchdowns, 2 touchdowns, 2 field goals, that's okay. All 4, you probably don't feel great about it, but Ryan understands that they're going back to work at it. And here's a little listen of some of what Iowa's defense was able to do to Ohio State and what, some of the issues were with maybe, and what I was exactly doing to slow down the Bucks.
They typically play a ton of quarters, too high, yep, where they're going to make their cloud checks and different things based on your splits. Saw a lot more pressure, saw a lot more single high, and then in the red zone and then the short yardage situations, brought a good amount of zero pressure. So, changed it up a little bit, and took us a few drives to get it recognized. But once we did, I thought we recognized it decent and got us into the right stuff.
That's a little insight into what they were ultimately doing right there. And, moving around a little bit, running some pressures. Iowa doesn't typically blitz a lot. Little single high man. Typically, there were two safeties back playing quarters coverage, and then moving around a little bit. Different alignments up front. Someone asked me, as we get into the mailbag portion here, what was Iowa doing that was giving Ohio State so much trouble? And I will say this: they were moving around a lot. They came out in some things that they don't normally do, and they're physical and they're tough players. So when you put all those things together, it's going to be a little bit more difficult from time to time. It's not going to be so easy to be able to go up there and run it down the field. Now, Ryan's not running from it. He's not making excuses for it. But what he is saying is, hey, you know what? There were some things there that maybe it took us a little bit to get adjusted to. We were able to kind of get them adjusted later. You saw them kind of run and do some other stuff as well. Now, before we get to the rest of the mailbag, Jim Harbaugh had some awesome sound. They played Penn State, beat the brakes off them. And they've got the single tunnel situation. They've had it since the Big House opened. And Harbaugh was asked about James Franklin's comments about him complaining about both teams coming out of the same tunnel.
Coach Franklin's opinion on the halftime tunnel. I mean, all they got to do is walk into their locker room. I think you saw pretty clearly that they completely stopped. They weren't letting us get up the tunnel, and it just seemed like such a sophomore ploy to try to keep us out of our locker room. And he looked like he was the ringleader of the whole thing. So, but no, I got bigger fish to fry than worry about that kind of whining.
Sophomoric and whiny. I love it. I love it. And he's calling out James Franklin in a big way right there. You think about it. James Franklin, he's been there, 8-9 years? You've played in Michigan, 4 or 5 times? It's had one tunnel the whole time. They've had one tunnel since they built the thing. Would it be ideal to have your teams run out opposite tunnels? Yeah. But they can't re-engineer the Big House at this point. It is what it is. Can't change it. It's like, why are you complaining about it? And if he did stop, I don't know if that was true. I mean, I know they had a little scuffle, but Ohio State's had tons of scuffles. You've seen it before. I mean, you've watched John Hicks run through down there and grab the Michigan Alumni Association banner and, tear it down. I mean, there's been all kinds of stuff that happens when they run through the tunnels. And that's what makes these rivalries great. So James Franklin, stop complaining about it. It is what it is. All right, now let's see if we can get to the mailbag here. Get some of these questions answered that come firing away, because there's always some good stuff that we get on Twitter. How concerned should OSU be with their run game not being able to run for positive yards when it's clear they're running? They've got to continue to work on it. Number one, you don't always have to, it needs to be understood that, like, yes, people can know, hey, on 3rd and 1, we're going to run the ball, but maybe not exactly what run is coming. And so, Ryan, they talk about self-scouting and understanding it and knowing your tendencies, and in that, knowing what they'll be in. They know what to expect from you, so you have an idea what to expect from them. There is a level of concern with that, but I'm not overly worried. Iowa did some things that were really good, yes. Michigan's going to have a good front. I think they'll be able to get that stuff corrected. They'll continue to work on it. I'm glad that they were able to experience it now, because Justin Fry, Kevin Wilson, Ryan Day are going to get on it. Hard to argue the success of the offense for the Ohio State. The one thing that I've seen about Ryan Day's offense, I feel the running attack is underutilized, sometimes greatly underutilized. Not sure if I were 4 or 5 star, I'd be in a hurry to play for the respectively. Well, they've had Travion Henderson was one of the top running backs in the country to come in. They've recruited multiple guys that are top 5 running backs, and they utilize them. No running back, however, I don't believe anymore wants to go somewhere and carry the ball 30 times for 3 years every game. It's going to wear you down, and you're not going to be able to have the longevity of your NFL career. So it's a balance of being able to peddle your wares, show your skills for the NFL, and help your team win, while also hopefully splitting the load, sharing some of that burden with other guys in the backfield, and making sure you have an offense that can throw the ball so you're not running into a stacked box all the time. So that's another big piece of it. But we see a twist on defense that we haven't seen yet. Yeah, there's things that they've got up their sleeves. Jim Knowles is always in the lab putting some new stuff in each and every week. This week we might see a little bit. We saw more 3-backer sets against Iowa because that's what they came out in. That's what they were a part of. They're always putting in new blitzes. They're always game planning and putting things. I don't know if you'll see something crazy different, but you'll see some twists on some things. Questions about the running game. Thoughts on Texas A&M's current situation. You want to talk about problems. They've had Jimbo Fisher's been there 5 years. They've had top 10 recruiting classes basically every year. Last season, this freshman class was the highest ranked of all time. They're paying Jimbo, $10 million a year. They've invested in their NIL space. They have great facilities, and they're 3-4, and dudes are smoking dope before the game, reportedly in the locker room, and getting suspended. They got huge issues. Those are the thoughts. Be glad you're not an Aggie fan or an Aggie booster who's writing checks for that nonsense right now. It's a mess. It's a mess. You can handle losses, but be disciplined. Make sure your players are buying in. They're going to have a hard time retaining some of those guys. If I'm a 5-star, 4-star guy and I went there and I see the mess that it is right now, like, I don't know that I would be staying after this season. It's easy to transfer. They're going to have that to worry about. Which current Buckeye player will be the highest drafted in the years to come? Could it be Sonny Styles, Mike Hall over one of the DEs? I don't know. You got those two guys. You got Jack Sawyer. You got JT. I mean, Lathan Ransom's playing really well. Denzel Burke struggled a little this year, but it doesn't mean he can't turn it around. He's still young in his career. I really like Jordan Hancock. It's really tough to call it at this point. Hickman's a good player. They've got some dudes over there, not to mention Tommy Eichenberg and Steel Chambers and what they've been able to put together. Tommy's quietly putting together one of the best college football seasons for any linebacker in the country. So I'm not sure. We'll have to see with that. Lendell White revealed he had as much as $150K mysteriously misplaced in an apartment that he lived in college. Did I ever get similar treatment? I can honestly sit here and tell you I never got a dime from anyone at school. And I'm pretty certain I can say that about a number of my friends, especially the linebackers I played with, because we used to joke about how we didn't have any money. You get guys maybe buy you some shots and beers in college when you go out after a game, but I mean, what are we talking about? I mean, talking about 150 grand. And with the NIL stuff now, I mean, I don't know where you went to get that. I used to joke with AJ. I don't know where you go to get those duffel bags of cash. That was not going on at Ohio State when I was here, and I don't think that's ever really went on at Ohio State. Thoughts on this year's Penn State matchup not being a night game, potential impact of noon versus 8. It's a much easier environment to play in. Then wideouts are incredibly tough to play in at Happy Valley. It's loud. It's a raucous environment. They've got all day to get ready. They're jumping. They're screaming. You can see the whole second deck shaking multiple feet. It is a wild scenario and a wild situation. So with that, like, it being noon, yeah, it's going to be packed. It's going to be loud, but there won't be near the intensity and it won't be as intimidating. I think that's probably going from noon to 3 is worth, or noon to 8, a night game is worth probably 3 points on a Vegas line. And that's a defensive guy who's just watching it, knowing that you can't hear anything over there. So it'll be loud, but it won't be quite as good. When do you think we will see a full game of JSN instead of a pitch count? Crazy what this offense has done without him. They'll ease him into it. The reality is, after this week, I don't know another game until maybe Maryland or Michigan that you feel like you would even need him. And so as they kind of ease through there, you just want to ease him back in. And really, he shouldn't need to even play more than a half in many of those games anyway. Last one here. What are the Buckeyes' flaws? What should they focus on moving deep into the season? You want to get that run game going a little better at times. You saw a struggle against an Iowa team and some movement up front, maybe recognizing it quicker. And that was good that they saw that, because it gets players' attention and it allows them to focus. And when you're not having as much success, you're going to have to work harder at it. So I think that's a good thing. What happened was a good thing. But they've been great on the red zone all year. They struggled against Iowa. They'll get that corrected. They were 3 of 13 on third down. That'll get corrected. I'm not overly worried about that. Flaws, they've gotten the penalties corrected. Special teams have been better. People are worried about them giving up, a kickoff or punt return, mostly kickoff returns. They kick so many. I think they'll be all right. I like Parker Fleming. They're doing a good job. The guys are playing hard. They're emphasizing it. And that's the one thing, is you get healthy, you get more guys available on special teams too, which is a big piece of what's going on. So that's huge. And then lastly, I'll leave you with this. I've got the Don't Make It Weird shirt on for mental health. Ryan and Nina Day, with what they're doing, the support that they have with the On Our Sleeves Foundation. It is, it's pretty tremendous. Ryan's open and talking about stuff. He's a great communicator. He's a fantastic man. And, listening to, grown, tough, physical, like intimidating guys talk about mental illness. It's something that, it can not always the easiest thing. So it's great that they say that. I just happen to wear this, what, bring some attention to it, bring a little light to it. So that's it for this show. Preview Penn State here at the end of the week. Excited for that. Going to be fantastic. Talk about some of the other big games, because there's a couple other big games in college football. Continue to like, subscribe, share with friends, comments. I read all that stuff, or at least I try to get most of your things answered. So until then, I'll see you next. Thanks.